Hello, dear students. In our lesson today, we're going to do some speaking. Of course, we're going to see some dialogues about how to ask for advice, how to give advice, how to show our sympathy about a problem that someone has, or how to describe a stressful situation. Now, before doing our dialogues, let's discuss a little bit. We can see a lady and we can see a girl. What do you think she is? She might be a student, and maybe she is, take a look at the photo. Maybe she is in a place and she's learning some things. So I would like to ask you, what is work experience? So, do you think at this age that you are, you can have some work experience? Yes, of course. You might be working for a couple of weeks or for some months in a specific place, in different places, and then you get some experience about this work. Do you think that this is useful? Absolutely, because you learn how to communicate with other people. You get an idea of what kind of job that is. You might be exchanging opinions, and this makes you even more confident about what you want to do in the future. Okay, we're going to see in the United Kingdom what is this work experience. So, did you know that nearly all 15 or 16-year-old students, like you are, in the United Kingdom do work experience before they leave school? Now, what is work experience? In the United Kingdom, work experience means that you work from 1 to 3 weeks as full-time for a local employer. So you work 8 hours since it is a full-time, and you might be working somewhere near your school or near your house. So you get some working experience. What are the benefits of working experience? It teaches useful work skills. So one we said was the communication skill. It makes you think about possible careers. So if you have some different working experience, you might like one of them and you might feel that you would like to continue working in this field. It develops self-confidence and the communication skills that we mentioned. So you feel confident about something that you might follow in the future. Now, we're going to deal with a conversation. This is speaking, of course, but we're going to read it here. So we have Lisa and Nick. They are having this dialogue. We're going to read it. Lisa says, "You know, when you did your work experience," and Nick says, "Yes. What was it like?" "It was really good," says Nick. It really helped me to know what sort of job I want to do in the future, and also what I want to do." And Lisa says, "Oh, that's good. I need to do work experience soon. What do you think I should do?" Nick says, "You should think about it carefully. My best advice would be to think about your ideal career and then choose the kind of job you really want to do. I don't think you should do what somebody else wants you to do. You should choose." And Lisa says, "Okay, thanks. That's really helpful. And do you have any tips on how to learn from my work experience?" We have divided the dialogue here, but we are going to have a question, and I would like from you to tell me whether the sentence is true or false. So, Nick enjoyed doing work experience according to the dialogue. Do you remember what he said? Well, that is true, because Nick said it was really good. So the sentence given is true, of course. Let's move on with the dialogue. Well, Lisa, remember, asked for some tips. And he says, well, first I think you should think about what you want to learn. Then you should work hard and try out as many different new skills as possible. You should talk to other employees too, because you can learn a lot from experienced people. So if we have the sentence, he doesn't think you can learn much from other employees. What did we read? Was the sentence true or false? Of course, it's false, because he said you should talk to other employees. You can learn a lot from them. For this reason, the sentence is false. Let's continue with the dialogue. Oh, I'm not sure that's a good idea, says Lisa. I don't want to annoy people. They will be busy. But Nick says, just be polite and it will be fine. Oh, and it's a good idea to listen to any feedback you receive and learn from it. That's great advice, thanks. Nick says, so what are you going to do? Lisa says, well, my dad wants me to work at the hospital with him, but I am going to follow your advice and do what I want to do. I am going to contact the local radio station and apply to work with a DJ. And Nick says, all right, well, if I were you, I would tell your dad when he is in a good mood. So, when we're given the sentence, he isn't sure that Lisa's father will accept her plans. In the last sentence, he wasn't sure whether he should tell her father, she should tell her father and how to tell her. So, he isn't sure whether her father is going to accept the plans. So the sentence is true. And we have the last sentence that confirms our answer. And let's move on. We're given now some sentences on how, for example, to ask for advice. How was Lisa asking for advice? How was she asking Nick? What do you think I should do? Or do you have any tips on how to? She didn't use the last one, but you can use it in order to ask for some advice. Or if we want to give advice, so how did Nick give her some pieces of advice? You should talk to your father, for example, or I think you should ask more people. I don't think you should do this or that. These are some of the expressions that Nick and Lisa used, but of course you can use all of them in order to give some advice. And let's continue. If we want to accept some advice, so Lisa was accepting some advice from Nick. What did she say? She says, yes, thanks. That is really helpful. So that helped me a lot. Or that's great advice. Thanks. And if we want to reject advice, so we didn't really like the advice, that piece of advice that somebody gave us, we can say, I'm not sure that's a good idea, for example, or I don't really like that piece of advice. I'm not sure I can follow that. So these were some of the expressions that we can use to ask for advice, to give advice, to accept some advice, or to reject it. And now, if, for example, we want to prepare ourselves about a specific job and we're asking for some advice, and the other person gives now advice. So we need to match the five different ideas of giving advice. I think you should what? Take a look at the possible answers. So, I think you should, of course, do some research before starting your work experience. I think you should do some research. Number 2, I don't think you should be nervous. Another piece of advice. A third one, my best advice would be to be on time. Another piece of advice. Or, it's a good idea to prepare some questions beforehand. Or, another way of giving advice, if I were you, I would just be myself. And as homework, after learning how to ask for advice, how to give advice, I would like from you to take a look at the statements given, and you can choose 1 or 2 and give some pieces of advice to your friends. So imagine, for example, that your friend tells you, I want to stay fit. Use the expressions that we learned, and you can give different pieces of advice, like, for example, if I were you, I would go to the gym. Or, why don't you try on cutting down on fast food, for example. Or, it would be a good idea to start jogging. So, using 3 different expressions, you can give 3 different pieces of advice for each one of those. I hope now that you are much clearer with your ideas of how to ask for advice, how to give advice, to accept it or to reject it. Thank you for paying attention. Goodbye.